Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
Friday nights here in the country can get a little crazy sometimes, so I don't mind when my neighbors cause a ruckus or a loud party as long as it's not too crazy. Tonight I'm on call for Virginia State Police towing rotation, which means I've got 25 minutes to get to wherever the RIC/DUI/inbound and so on is. As luck would have it, my neighbors are having a party, and guess what's blocking my driveway? That's right, about 25 to 30 cars. I live down a dirt road at the end of a cul-de-sac, and it's pretty narrow. One in, one out type of deal. And with this rain we've been having, parking in the grass/clay/mud is really not the best idea. Even with a 4x4, it can still get tricky. I noticed a few cars coming in early this evening. I walked over to my neighbors and made it pretty clear I was on call, and as long as they didn't block the road or my driveway, all will be good. No problems here. Well, I got a call from my boss asking if I can go warm up the rotator and a light-duty flatbed, tow trucks. It's about 12:30 a.m., so I get my boots on and other gear because if I'm up, I might as well stay at the shop and clean a few things to stay busy and make the night move along. I get in my car, and as I'm backing out of the driveway, I notice I'm blocked in. I don't mean by one truck, but by nearly 15 different vehicles. I calmly walk over to my neighbors about 1/8 mile hike, and as I'm looking for them through the crowd of drunk teenagers, some idiot wants to know why I'm on his property. He's not the property owner. I've never seen this classy gentleman before. Finally, I find my neighbor and ask her if she can move the cars. I've got to go to work, and she says in a normal tone, doesn't tell over the music into the house, "Whoever's blocking the driveway next door, move your trucks," then slams the door in my face. I knock again, and she answers with a drunken, "Oh God, this witch again." Internally, I'm thinking, alright then. I do my best to explain. I'm on call and need to get out of my driveway to go to work. She comes back sloshing and natural light exclaiming, "It's a party, relax." Shut the door in my face and yells, "Screw that dyke jerk." I smile, and as I'm walking away, a macho man throws a beer at me and cackles, "Yeah, you best leave. Go on, get." I get on a phone with dispatch and call for as many trucks as we have available tonight, about 10, and tell them to come on over. Mama's got some private property inbounds. I call police dispatch and ask if they'd send out an officer in case things get out of hand, and as soon as he gets to my place, my rigs start rolling up and hooking vehicles up and taking them to the impound yard. We get down to the last 3 vehicles, a yellow Civic, gold Silverado, and an old F-150. A Civic owner bolts to his car and takes off. The Silverado girl, pretty wasted, gets stuck and starts steering up my property. Officer walks over and she throws a fit. Long story short, she gets arrested for underage drinking and DUI. The Ford owner doesn't even show up. I get to work after all the impounds, and with me I brought coffee and snacks for my drivers. Tomorrow's not a business day, which means if these tools want their cars back, it's going to be the regular $290 plus 2 days of storage at $55 a day and the $100 gate fee. I make a note in every single storage sheet, papers that the vehicle owners get, to thank the girl who had the party for getting towed. Several of the kids' parents called wanting to know where their cars or trucks were. I gave them the yard address and told them they can come anytime. As soon as they started shouting about illegal tows and threatened with lawyers, I showed them pictures of their cars with no parking signs and explained that I tried to reason with the owner of the property, me, but she was tired of being blocked in by drunken teenagers. There are signs on my road saying no parking and not to block the driveway. Do not piss off a tow truck driver. She will legally take your vehicles. Edit. The gate fee is only for after hours. It covers expenses of overtime for the office staff who have to get out of bed and come to work in the middle of the night. So starting out by saying that this happened to a friend of mine and they gave me permission to share it. I used to do part-time volunteer work for a local park. It was pretty basic stuff like picking up trash and light security. which was just making sure that people aren't damaging the park property or to report anything shady going on. This park was fairly big and had a jungle gym in the back of it behind the wall of trees. One day I noticed that there are tire marks in the grass right where a turnout of the back is. It's fairly easy to make that turn and doesn't come out of nowhere or anything. So I don't know why someone would go through the grass. Also keep in mind it was very muddy and cold, so the tire marks were pretty much cemented in after the grass was run over. I called my supervisor and they said that we will fix that area when it gets a little warmer, which it was going to be later that week. A couple days later, when I'm near the front of the park patrolling, I notice a minivan coming up from the back of the park. It goes right through the same area of the grass that was previously run over. I couldn't believe I just witnessed it happen. The turn doesn't come out of nowhere and you can clearly see that going straight out will take you through the grass. I start jogging towards the van, waving my arms to get the driver's attention. She stops and rolls down her window, wearing thick sunglasses and looking at me confused at first. She also had 2 kids in the back. What? Excuse me, miss. I am one of the park workers. You drove straight through the grass back there. With how muddy it is right there, the grass gets damaged very easily. Okay. She clearly didn't care and shocked me a bit that she didn't apologize about it. Well, the grass is going to need to be put back down. I understand if it was a mistake, but please be more careful when coming out from the back. I can tell she's giving me a dirty look, even with her giant sunglasses covering most of her face. Oh, whatever. She says rudely and drives out towards the entrance after I say thanks and back away from the van. Fast forward a couple days, me and my supervisor had finished flattening the dirt and putting down new seed for that area in the morning. I was pretty happy with how it turned out and the grass would look better than it did before once it grew. Later that day when I come back to patrol the park, I notice the same minivan in the back parking lot. I head over to the jungle gym area and of course I see the entitled mom on a bench looking at her phone while her kids are playing. I was hoping in the back of my mind that she would have listened to me yesterday, but judging from how she acted, I was doubtful. I did a couple walks around the back area making sure there wasn't any trash. When I saw her tell the kids it was time to go, I sprinted towards the front of the park entrance, stand in front of a car at the front and put my own pair of sunglasses on. I keep them in a fanny pack along with some medical supplies and my phone, so that she wouldn't recognize me and stay on the path. Like how you slow down on a road when passing a police officer. Once her van starts coming up, I'm watching in disbelief as once again she doesn't turn and goes right through the same area again that we had just fixed up this morning. I am pissed now. I walk up to her van, this time being in the middle of the pavement, and she stops when I approach, rolling down her window and giving me a pissed look that I stopped her again. Oh my god, what do you want? Miss, you ran over that area again. We had finished fixing it this morning and you just ran it over. So, it's just some grass. You should just make that whole area pavement so it won't get run over. You can clearly see that the grass is in front of you when you drive up from the back area. It doesn't come out of nowhere, and we've never had anyone run over that area. Only you. I had a frustrated tone in my voice but was still trying to be polite. Her kids in the back were glued to their tablets and weren't paying any mind to me other than when they heard their mom swear. They looked to be around 6 to 8, I think. She gives me one more nasty look before rolling up her window and driving away. Didn't even respond to my last point. Also, she almost ran over my foot since she didn't wait for me to back away from her van before driving off. That was my tipping point. I called my supervisor again and told him what happened. I could tell he was pretty pissed over the phone but said that he had a plan to stop that area from getting run over anymore. I met him on Friday morning and he has this giant boulder in the back of his pickup truck. I instantly knew what we were going to be doing with it. After some work getting it down, digging up the dirt and wedging it into place, we finished putting the boulder in. I had to admit that it made me sad that there was now this eyesore of a rock there and all our work previously was for nothing. But I was happy the entitled mom wouldn't be running over that area anymore. Later that day, I'm in the back picking up trash when I see the same minivan pull into the parking lot. I know it's the entitled mom and her kids cause I remember their license plate this time. I pay no mind to them, knowing that she couldn't run over the grass again when they leave now. Later on, I was cleaning some bird poop off a statue when I heard a loud crash sound that came from the front. I run over to where it came from, shocked as I see the entitled mother's van with a giant boulder we put down wedged between her tire and the bumper of her car. She gets out of the van in shock at what happened, swearing and shouting. I personally didn't want to damage her car, just realizing she couldn't drive through the grass anymore, so I did feel some guilt at seeing the giant boulder wedged in her car. I came over to the other side to see that the wheel was off the ground slightly and the front bumper wedged atop the boulder. I don't know how she even managed that, honestly. She sees me and immediately gets a look of pure, concentrated anger. "You!" She starts walking up to me, stomping her feet. "You put that rock there, didn't you, jerk?" "Miss, my supervisor brought that boulder in this morning for that spot because you were running over the grass. I don't know how you even hit it since again, you can clearly see it coming from the back." "I was texting my friend, you jerk. You're going to pay for this damage." "Yeah, I don't think so." She fumes and heads back to her car. She has her two kids get out and go sit at a nearby table, both still playing on her tablets. The entitled mom got back in the car and is on the phone. A few minutes later, she tells me she called the police and that I'm going to be arrested for intentionally damaging her property. I admit I was a bit worried that what story she gave them probably wasn't the truth. So I called my supervisor again. He got here even before the police did. I saw him laughing as he pulled up and saw the situation. He walks up to the entitled mom and explains who he is, and she starts yelling at him about how she's going to sue and have him and myself arrested for the damage. A few minutes later, the police pulled up. She tells him that we intentionally put that rock there to damage her car. But we explained to the officer that she had driven over that grass several times even after we had fixed it, and we put that boulder down to keep her and others from driving through the grass. The police got some information from us and told the entitled mom that we were in the right to put that boulder down and aren't liable for her poor driving. The entitled mother tells her kids to get back in the car and actually starts to back out of the boulder. My supervisor, the officers, and I all watch as the boulder is scraping up the bottom of her car as she backs out. Once off it, her front bumper slams on the pavement and is now hanging down off the left side. Something under her car was also touching the pavement, which was apparent as she started to drive away, and a sound of something scraping against the road could be heard. The officers stop her and tell her that her car is now not safe to drive on the road and she needs to get it towed. My supervisor and I went home shortly after, smiling and laughing at what had happened that day. I can safely assume now she won't be going over that grass anymore. This is a story about a piece of crap receiving their deserved karma several years later. Many years ago, I worked in a lovely career of retail. It's sadly normal for there to be a constant flow of shop scum that make you despise their existence. And there are those that are so horrific that what they do is burned into your mind forever. Fortunately, one of these unforgettable moments allowed me to exact my revenge. I had only worked in retail for 1 year in this newly built store I was starting to settle in. Getting to know the great customers and understanding that some people shouldn't be allowed outside. Which, being a shy person who hates conflict, wasn't the best, but at least one of my customers was an absolutely adorable elderly lady who always made time to talk. It was an absolute joy to be with. It had been some weeks since I had last seen her, but one morning, I saw her car park into the disabled parking bay. She already has a blue badge. Only this time she hobbled out of the car on crutches with a pot on her leg. I didn't have a chance to talk to her yet when a work truck, which did not have a blue disabled badge, pulled into the disabled space next to her and out jumped an early 40s builder who was her teenage kid. Well, this little old lady was having none of this and must have absolutely massive balls of steel and stood up to this ignorant builder and politely informed them that they shouldn't be parking there as it's for the disabled and he doesn't have a badge. What happened next? I can't forget. This builder decided the best course of action was to humiliate and insult this poor elderly lady in crutches accuse her of faking her disability and claim the cast on her leg was a fake, and that she probably milks the benefit system for as much money as she could. Then walks up putting in an over-dramatic fake claim, laughing away with their teenage kid, whilst the old lady stood there in shock. Sadly, being one who lacks courage, I did absolutely nothing about it, and that would stick with me forever. I tried feebly to ask a manager later to do something about it, but they didn't care or want to get involved. For years, I worked in this store, always seeing this scum builder come in and out. Fortunately, I never interacted with this scum builder, but I saw them often, and every time I did, I would always remember what they had done vividly. I would still see them park in the disabled bays, and even get to the point where I would recognize them by the large blue Mercedes they drove. 7 years later, I was still working in the store, and this scum was still parking in disabled and looking like an absolute C-word. Yet, this year I was blessed with good fortune, and our store was outfitted with some absolute joyful equipment. Due to the high number of complaints, our store had set up a company to deal with the parking violations. But instead of having external parties coming in and ticketing cars, the staff of the store were given their ticketing machine, and it was our duty to go to the car park and record any cars that violated the parking rules. This was all done digitally, and there would be no paper tickets upon the cars. This was brilliant. As soon as I found out, I knew what I was going to do. It didn't take long for me to learn how to use the machine, and it certainly didn't take long for the opportunity to get revenge. And so, it began. There were 3 rules for parking, and if you break these rules, there is a lovely £80 fine in return each time it's happened. The first rule, no parking in disabled without a badge. And I know well that the scum builder is certainly violating this rule, and it wasn't long until I saw him next. And as soon as he entered the store, I quickly scurried out with the ticketing machine, and lo and behold, there was the oversized blue Mercedes in the closest disabled bay with no badge. I smashed their car details in with some well-shot photos and sent the report off so they would receive a lovely letter of their fine they would ask the bay. That's not enough though, but fortunately it takes weeks for them to finally receive the ticket, which grants me the opportunity to constantly ticket their parking violations, because as you would expect, the scum would always park in disabled. And as I work at the front of the store, I would always know when they have parked. After ticketing their car dozens of times, the scum unfortunately learned their lesson, as their oversized blue Mercedes no longer appeared in disabled parking bays. But as you expect, the scum would still be scum, and they would find their new parking space inside child parking. Rule number 2. Do not park inside child parking without a child. Had this scum gotten enough, I thought? Of course. Now they haven't learned their lesson and continue to be a complete wanker and park in a child parking, which we didn't have many spaces for. At this point, I knew all their car details by heart and would gleefully fill out the ticket machine as I skipped over to their car violating the child parking and take the photos needed for them, including shots of their cars. Car seats that bear no child seats in them. And as it became routine, this once again carried on a few weeks more of tickets being created, and eventually they started receiving the fines. Fortunately, me being me, I'm completely invisible to others and often looked over, and I have yet to be seen or caught. But as all good things must eventually come to an end, when the scum came into the shop, their blue turd automobile was no longer there, in child parking, or disabled. Has the scum finally learned their lesson? Would you be surprised if they had not, as it didn't take me long to find them. Rule number 3. You must park inside a marked bay. What a surprise, the scum still manages to screw this up. They will park over the line, taking 2 spaces up. Well, guess what? That's a job for me and my ticket machine. Trying to park inside a taxi parking but can't fit the big car in it? Boom. That ain't inside a marked bay, and ka-ching! Another ticket and fine for the have one single wheel slightly over the white line of a bay? Well, guess who technically broke the rule? Well, that's right, Scumbag did. And there goes a few more weeks of fun, until eventually Scumbag runs out of ways that they can possibly break the rules and our company hires externally to start ticketing cars, so my beloved weapon of justice goes to rest. Now, I know what people are probably going to say, that all these fines are not enforceable because of blah blah blah, but I honestly don't care for a few reasons. Firstly, I am being paid to do this, so either way my time or money isn't wasted. Secondly, it did have an effect as they repeatedly changed their parking habits. And thirdly, even if they don't end up paying, they are still going to spend a ton of money and effort trying to overturn them over and over again, having to constantly be harassed by mail. Overall, if all the fines are counted separately and added up, they would have received thousands of pounds worth of fines building up over time for being scum. The cherry on top, about 3 years later I walk by this piece of scum in a car park and watch as they scream at some innocent dude in a high-vis jacket accusing them for being the one giving them all the parking fines. Which put me at peace, knowing this must have seriously got to them and cost them to still be raving mad after 3 years. At about 6 a.m. a handicapped man goes to the local 7-Eleven to get his coffee. He has a walker and it's hard for him to walk up onto the curb once he gets out of his car. Nothing unusual. One day he got to 7-Eleven just to see that someone had parked in the only handicapped parking spot. Not only that, but the person who was parked wasn't even handicapped. Just as a woman was pulling out of the spot, the handicapped man perfectly blocks her in, pulling up so close she can't even wiggle. And the entitled woman gets out of the car. "What are you doing? You blocked my car." He rolls down the window and says, "You don't seem to be handicapped, so I took the spot." Before she can even answer, he says, which is the best thing I've ever heard, "Do you want to be?" The entitled woman screams at the handicapped man, "Just move your freaking car." He simply replies, "No." He hops out of the car, pulls out his walker, and slowly makes his way into the 7-Eleven, while the entitled woman was still blocked. Oh boy, he takes his sweet time, talking with the cashier and eating his bagel right in the store. Then he takes out the newspaper and starts reading. He probably stayed for about 30 minutes before backing away and leaving. The entitled woman was pissed, but at least she had time to think about her actions. A couple days ago, I went out to the store to get something I needed. I was checking on my phone exactly what it was I needed to get when I heard a slam that I knew came from my car. I looked to the side and saw some older guy and his door embedded into mine. I opened my window and he said, "I hate your door," gave me a shrug, and proceeded to get in his car. I yelled for him to wait so I could assess the damage, as the hit felt pretty significant. As I expected, there was a scratch dug into the paint down to the metal and scratched beyond that, as if he had pushed it further after the initial hit, as well as a big dent to go with it. I noticed he was driving off, so I ran out to him and signaled him to roll the window down. "Hey man, that was a pretty significant hit. You were just driving off? Was that even an apology or anything?" "It's just a scratch." "It's nothing." "No, it's not. The paint came off down to the middle, and it's a pretty big dent." "You were parked too close to me." "The hell I was. I am parked perfectly within the lines. Look." "Well, so am I." "Then you had no excuse to hit it." "You know what? Give me your insurance information." The dummy proceeds to slam on the gas and leave. I managed to snap a picture of his plates. I called the sheriff's department, as we do a lot of work for them and know everyone at the department as well. But unfortunately, they told me they couldn't do anything because it was just a door ding and could not provide me any information from his tags. We live in a tiny town, so I go into the store and ask for his name. I get his first name. From his first name, I was able to find his Facebook. Not a lot of people named Dummy in my town. From his Facebook, I found we had mutual friends. From those mutual friends, I found out where he lived. From where he lived and his name, I found his phone number online. I found out everything there is to know about this guy, his family, where he likes to hang out on Saturdays, where and who he works for, what kind of beer he drinks, literally everything except what he wears to bed. From his tags, I got the VIN online. I messaged him to give him a chance to do the right thing. That went over as I expected. It was Friday night, so I could not call anywhere to get more info. So I messaged him. To make it short, he kept saying, "Meet me in the morning if it's so important." and making fun of me, saying how his car door has a red mark and how I can do whatever I want and he'll get away with it. Come Monday, I called the local DMV as my investigations said they can give me the name of his insurance company and nothing else was the information I have. I was right. I called in a claim yesterday and I got the email with the estimate totaling to almost $600. Here is a kicker. I work at a body shop and could have fixed it myself for free. Not even a dime. Only reason I went through with it was sweet revenge. Thanks for screwing up and being a bad person, causing me to get some much needed money, dummy. I, male 19, work as a cashier in a gas station in Miami Gardens, Florida. Naturally, the people that come into the store tend to be on a crazier side. The store had a line of maybe 7 people. Now, at this point, I had the register closed, sign up, and I was stocking the vaporizers and accessories on the shelves behind the counter. My coworker was handling the customers in line. I turn when I hear the door opening. Another lady walks in without a mask on. I politely ask, "Excuse me, miss, do you have a mask that you could put on?" She scoffed at me and rolled her eyes as she dug in her purse for a minute or two. Finally, she pulls out a ratty little mask with only one functional strap and holds it to her face while she's waiting in the line. Well, apparently she couldn't do that for very long. She comes to the front of the line ranting and raving about how the line is taking too long and that we shouldn't be keeping a valued regular customer waiting. I've been working here for 4 months and I've never seen her before. I am fairly confident I know all the regulars. I tell her that there are other things that my manager left for me to do before the end of the closing and that I have to get them done. She didn't seem to like that at all. "I demand that you open your register right now." "Okay, you got it, lady." I moved the sign and then I turned back to her. "Do me a favor and stand a little bit to your right." Surprisingly, she complied, albeit with her arms crossed, and what I can only assume was an angry gaze firing through her mask. Cue the malicious compliance. "Next customer," I yell out into the store. It dawns on her what I'm doing, but the next customer shoots up in front of the counter before she can even fully process it. I go about this transaction as normal despite the fact that this lady is yelling at me at the top of her lungs. No longer holding the mask to her face, mind you. I finish up with the other customer and I turn to her. She tries to yell over me, so I raise my voice a bit and try to be as stern as possible. I tell her, just because my register is open now, doesn't entitle you to skip all the other people in this line who also have lives, jobs, and other responsibilities. Get to the back of the line and be respectful, or I have no choice but to have you removed from the store. We don't have security, but we're 2 blocks away from a police station, and one of the cool officers who comes into the store gave me their personal number to use just in case we have any issues. The lady hurrums loudly and walks dejectedly to the spot in the line she had before she left. In the amount of time it took for the rest of the story to occur, more people had gotten in the line. I said the back of the line. I told her pointedly. She dropped her shoulders and walked to the back like a toddler. People, man. We, my aunt and uncle, cousin and dad, were on a long sightseeing ferry ride. It was a 2-hour ride with one stop in the middle. We were the first to get on a ferry, so all of us blocked the window seats in a straight line. It's public transport and there is no concept of reservation. It's first come, first serve. We were sitting in the air-conditioned cabin and had the option of going out on the main deck. Just as we stopped in the middle, my dad went out on the main deck to take some pictures and enjoy the fresh air. Another man gets on a ferry at this stop and takes my dad's window seat. There were a few other window seats left. My aunt and I told him a number of times and quite politely that someone was sitting there, but he only said, "I speak French," and proceeded to not hear us. My dad came back and told him he was sitting there, and this man called the security and complained about my dad. The security told my dad, "Sir, this is public transport. Seats cannot be reserved." My dad said, "All right," and sat down next to him. So the scene right now is window man, my dad, empty seat aisle. About 10 minutes later, the man was about to step out on the deck. He left his bag on a seat and got up to leave. My dad asked him to kindly remove his bag, but he refused. So my dad refused to get up and move to let him out. My dad said, "You can't reserve seats." He showed me the rule. "Kindly follow it yourself." He became very flustered and started clapping his hands and calling for security. Security also on a deck for the time being, but a barista was there. This man called the barista to help who didn't understand French either, so he told him in Arabic that my dad was refusing to move to let him out of the seat. The barista was flabbergasted and asked my dad why. I know Arabic, so I intervened and clarified the situation, that the man was keeping his bag and reserving his seat, which he told my dad is not allowed. By this time, the man has sort of climbed over my dad to go and call the security, and my dad hasn't budged. Keep in mind that my dad isn't a small man, and is quite big, with broad shoulders, and the sight of a tiny Frenchman climbing around him was really funny. The security came in and the guy is still feeding them part of the whole story in Arabic. When they came to ask my dad, he said, "You told me moments ago that reserving seats aren't allowed." He was keeping his bag and going out to the deck, thus reserving his seat because no one would sit down in a seat with a bag in it. The security told him he wasn't allowed to do that and removed his bag. Now my dad got up and told him that he can sit beside the window. My dad just wanted to prove a point and came and sat beside me. The man was fuming and muttering, "Camera, police," and a number of colorful French abuses, which I know because I have a French friend. He's glaring at us as I'm writing this, and guess what? He isn't sitting on a window seat anymore. Edit. For anyone saying we should have not blocked a bunch of window seats, firstly, the ferry was mostly empty and a lot of window seats were empty because we went during non-peak hours. Secondly, it was a vacation. All of us paid for the seats and wanted to have the best experience. It wasn't traveling from point A to point B, it was a sightseeing tour. And we wanted the best views individually, not sit as a group and have one person enjoy it. And no one was screaming to talk to others. We might take the best seats, but we are still courteous. Edit 2. My dad didn't call security the first time or the second. In both instances, a man called security. The first time my dad requested him once, and he said he doesn't speak English and got the security.